welcome to Advent at Trinity Lutheran Church in Bonners Ferry. We're happy to share our preparation for the coming of the Christ child with you every Wednesday night at 5:30. We usually have a little craft and a story. Before we begin, would you please join me in prayer? Dear God, as we prepare for the coming of the baby Jesus, your Son, our Savior, fill our hearts with Advent peace so that we can spread that peace to those around us, especially in our community. In your name we pray. Amen. Right now, our craft is going to be about stars. Stars play a very important part in Christmas decorations, as you well know. I wonder how many of you have stars on the top of your Christmas trees. If you look around, you find stars all lighted up and trees all over town. Oh yeah, there are even stars in front of Trinity Lutheran Church in the tree. The wise men waited for not just stars, but for one special star. The star that they had studied and read about that would guide them to a new king. And we'll hear more about that in our story. But I thought you might like to make a star, a rather special star tonight. And I will show you how. This is a pretty fancy star. But it's not so difficult to make as it looks. First, you need printer paper. Most of us have printer paper, or you can use Christmas wrap paper. What you need to do is have paper that you can turn into a square. If I take printer paper like this, and I fold it from one corner to the next, like this, and then I can cut off the bottom, and I have a square with a crease down the middle. You want to leave the crease and make it go like that. And you want to make another smaller triangle, a little bit more manageable. And here we have the smaller triangle. Then you're going to take the longest side and put it in your left hand. You're going to hold it with two fingers, or a finger and a thumb, and you're going to take with the little flaps on the bottom. Then you are going to take your scissors and you're going to cut 3 pretty equal lines across. Don't cut all the way through. Cut up to the fold. There's my second cut. And there's my third cut. And I did not go all the way through. And then I am going to open my piece of paper. And it should look like this, with all the lines. All right? And you can see it there. Then you are going to take the inside square right here, and you are going to join the 2 points like this. Now, you can use glue. I like to use glue dots, and you can get those at Walmart. I find them to be pretty darn easy. You stick one on, and up it comes. You fold it over, and you have a little tube, just like that. All right, you've gotten the first one done. Oh, but that doesn't look like mine. So, you face this towards you, and you put it down, and you take the next one. And you put a glue dot On the next one. All right, so here it is, the one you did. You put that one face down. You take the next one over, and you're going to go this way. Now you have one on this side and one on this side. So you're going to turn it over again, the one you just did. And you're going to put a glue dot on the next section. And you're going to join those two. All right, now we have 3 done, and it should look like this. And you're going to put the side you just glued together face down, and then you're going to do the last 2 together. And you're going to put these 2 together. And there you have, oh wait, it's not a star. This is 1 point on a 6-pointed star. You need to make 6 of these, and then you hook them together at the bottom. I just used a stapler. And you can maybe see it right here on mine. I just took a stapler and hooked it together. Okay, so I made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, just like this one. Now this one is bigger so that you can see it. I hooked them together in the middle with a staple gun. And you know, sometimes it's easier if you use your glue dots and hook the points together so it doesn't fall apart and it's not so floppy. But this would look really pretty as a decoration. I was thinking of making some smaller ones out of gold paper, and maybe even a couple for the Christmas tree. If you would like the written directions, I can write them down for you, and all you need to do is email Trinity Lutheran BF at gmail.com, and we'll make sure you get them. All right, now it's time for our story. Our story is about kindness. It's about a star, too, but it's a special story about the thing that we've been talking about on Sundays and Wednesdays, about showing kindness, which shows God's love for everyone. The story we're going to read tonight together is called The Other Wise Man. It's by Henry Van Dyke. It's actually been made into a video. It's been retold by Pamela Kennedy and illustrated by Robert Orett. It's a fairly old story, and it was published in 1989 by Hammerson Hill Publishing Incorporated. In the days when Augustus Caesar was the ruler of many kings, including Herod, who reigned in Jerusalem, there lived among the mountains of Persia a certain man whose name was Artaban. Here he is, looking over the city. Artaban was one of the Magi, men who study the heavens in search of truth about God. He and 3 of his friends from far away had made a wonderful discovery. In the ancient writings, they had found a promise that at a special time, a beautiful new star would rise in the eastern sky. At the rising of that perfect star, a great king would be born. He would be the truth, sent from the one God, the Son of the Most High. Artaban believed the time was getting very near. He had sold his house and all he owned to buy 3 precious jewels to carry as gifts for the newborn king. Now, as the sun began to set, Artaban reached into his colorful silk tunic and brought out the 3 great gems. You can see. A sapphire as blue as the Persian sky at night, a ruby as red as the first rays of sunrise, and a pearl as white and pure as the snow on a mountaintop at twilight. Artaban held the priceless gems together in his hands and gazed into the darkening sky. That was when he first saw the tiny spark on the horizon. He watched it grow larger and larger as it rose higher into the sky. Flashes of light surrounded the newborn star, gleaming with red and blue and the purest white, just like his jewels. "It is the sign," exclaimed Artaban. "The king is coming, and I will go now to meet him." Artaban's 3 friends had said they would wait for him only 10 days after sighting the star. He knew he must race to meet them at the Temple of Babylon, or they would leave to seek the king without him. Quickly saddling Vazda, his fastest horse, Artaban galloped off, barely stopping for food or drink. He rode across brown mountain slopes and level green plains. He passed fields of nodding poppies and orchards of peaches and figs. He picked his way carefully over rocky mountain passes and crossed swirling rivers. Poor Vasta was exhausted and could hardly walk as night fell on the 10th day. But Artaban knew it was still 3 hours' journey to the meeting place, and he urged his horse onward. Suddenly, Vasta stopped as if afraid, and Artaban saw something in the road. He slid from his horse and approached the dark shape for a closer look. It was the body of a man. Artaban felt the man's forehead and listened for the sounds of breathing. It seemed as if the man were dead. But as Artaban turned to go, the poor man reached out a hand, groaned, and grasped the hem of the wise man's robe. The man was still alive. But Artaban saw that without help, the sick man would not live through the coming night. If Artaban nursed him, the man would recover quickly. But Artaban would be too late to meet his friends at the temple. Artaban turned his eyes toward the star he had been following and prayed, "God of truth and light, show me the way of wisdom, which only you know." What should Artaban do? Then he turned to look at the sick man. Lifting the man gently, Artaban carried him to the foot of a palm tree. There he gave the poor fellow sips of cool water, and mixing a healing potion from the remedies he always carried, Artaban poured this too between the man's dry lips. For several hours, Artaban cared for the man as he slowly regained strength. Finally, the man awoke fully and asked, "Who are you?" Artaban told the man of his quest. "I have nothing to repay you for your kindness," said the man as he prepared to continue his journey. "But I will tell you this. From our Hebrew prophets we have learned that the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem, not in Jerusalem. You must seek him in Bethlehem." Hurriedly thanking the man, Artaban dashed to his horse and galloped off toward the temple. Although Vazda fled over the ground like a gazelle, the sun's first rays were shining as they entered the temple grounds. Anxiously, Artaban searched for his friends, but they were gone. Under a piece of brick, he found a note which read, "We have waited past midnight and can delay no longer. We go to find the king. Follow us across the desert." Artaban sat on the ground and covered his head in despair. How can I cross the desert, he cried, with no food and an exhausted horse? I must return, sell my sapphire, and buy a camel and food for the journey. Only God knows whether I will lose my chance to find the king, because I stopped to show kindness. And so it was that the other wise man sold his precious sapphire, bought a camel and supplies, and set out across the desolate desert. By day the sun burned with terrible heat, and at night the chill winds pulled at his flowing robes. After many long weeks, Artaban arrived in Bethlehem. Searching through the town, he came upon a stone cottage. Sitting inside was a young woman rocking her baby to sleep. Artaban knocked at the open door, and the woman motioned for him to enter. Seating himself on a low bench, Artaban told the woman of his 3 friends and the baby for whom he searched. The young mother listened and then nodded, saying, Yes, there were 3 strangers from the east who came, and they gave precious gifts to Mary and Joseph, the baby's parents. But the strangers left suddenly, and just last night, Joseph took his little family and disappeared. It is whispered that they have fled to Egypt to escape some unknown danger. Artaban's heart sank. He had failed once more. Seeing his despair, the woman placed her baby in a small cradle and rose to prepare a meal for the other wise man. Suddenly there came the noise of wild confusion and uproar in the streets. Women screamed, men cried out, and the clanging of swords and armor filled the air. Artaban ran to the doorway of the little cottage as the woman snatched up her baby and hid in the shadow of the room. The soldiers of Herod are coming for our children. The shouts filled the air as a towering centurion approached the tiny cottage. Artaban stood still, filling the doorway, and glared into the soldier's eyes. Then he slowly reached into his tunic and brought out the large ruby, watching the soldier's face gleam with greed. I'm all alone here, said Artaban, and I am waiting to give this gem to the centurion who will leave me in peace. Quickly the soldier snatched the jewel. Then he turned and shouted to his men, March on, there is no child here. The soldiers ran on down the street, leaving the other wise man and the grateful mother weak from relief. Oh, God of truth, forgive me for telling this lie and for giving to a man that gift, which was to be for you. Will I ever be worthy enough to see the face of our King? But the woman in the shadows spoke softly over her sleeping big child. Because you have saved the life of my little one, may the Lord bless you and keep you all your days. The next morning, Artaban decided to follow the baby king and his family into the land of Egypt. So he left the town of Bethlehem and traveled on. But his task was not easy. Remember, he has 1 jewel left. Month after month, year after year, the other wise man searched for the king. He traveled to the pyramids, to the Sphinx, to the palaces of the Pharaoh, and to the river Nile. But always the answer was the same. No king was to be found. Although he did not find anyone to worship, he found many to help. He fed the hungry, he bought clothes for the naked. He cared for the sick and visited those in prison. Still he carried the one beautiful pearl close to his heart, hoping one day to present it to the one he continued to seek. After 33 years of searching, Artaban had grown very old and tired. But he decided to take one last journey. He thought perhaps he might find the clue that would at last lead him to the king. So off he goes, heading for the city of Jerusalem. When he arrives, he watched a shouting, pushing crowd work its way through the narrow streets. "What is this uproar?" he asked a shopkeeper. "Have you not heard?" the man replied. "Two famous robbers are being crucified today, along with another man called Jesus, who claimed to be the Son of God. He's going to be executed because he said he was the King of the Jews." Artaban's heart raced at the man's words. Could it be that he had found his king at last? Perhaps if he hurried, he could arrive in time to offer his great pearl to the enemies of the king and rescue him before he died. Do you think he will make it? Gathering his robes around him, Artaban hurried up the dusty street. Just before he reached the city gates, he was stopped by a troop of soldiers dragging a young girl. The girl was crying and her hair and dress were tangled and torn. Seeing Artaban, she cried out, "Have pity, kind sir. My father died, owing these men a great sum of money. I am to be sold as a slave to pay the debt. Please save me from a life worse than death." Artaban had missed his king twice before as he helped someone in trouble. He was so close to the end of his search. Could he give it all up now? Then he looked into the eyes of the helpless girl. One thing was certain, rescuing her would be a true deed of love. And wasn't the ability to love the gift of the one true God? Artaban took the pearl and placed it in the hand of the weeping girl. "This is your ransom, child," he said. "It is the last of my treasures, which were to be given to the king." At that moment, the sky darkened, and echoing peals of thunder rumbled through the hot streets of Jerusalem. The walls of the houses rocked to and fro as the earth rolled as waves on the sea. The soldiers fled in terror, leaving Artaban and the girl alone. Suddenly, a heavy section of a roof broke loose and crashed down upon the other wise man. As Artaban fell to the ground, he heard a quiet yet insistent voice speak to him over the thunder. "Artaban," the voice called softly, "you have been a good and faithful servant. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was naked, and you brought me clothes. I was in prison, and you visited me. Come now to the rest I have prepared for you." "Not so, Lord," whispered Artaban with the last of his strength. "When did I ever do these things for you? I was looking for you." And the voice answered, "Whenever you helped one of my people in need, you helped me." The peace of understanding fell upon Artaban's soul like a gentle rain, and he smiled. His journey on earth was ended. His treasures were accepted. The other wise man had found the king. May this season bring you peace as you look for the king. And as we search for the king together, may we find him in the people around us. That's it for tonight. And I'm sorry this star didn't work, but I will try to send out an email so that you can make one at home. Good night, and God bless you.
Join us next week. Join us next week. Join us next week.
Next week is the Candle of Joy, and you can join us next week on Zoom, and we're going to hear about, probably about Las Posadas, which is a special custom in Central American cities.